Good morning, everyone. I hope that you're all doing really well today. There's a couple of you, I don't know if you read my email, but I accidentally left the meeting before recording certain people's WhatsApps yesterday. So I've sent some of you a private message asking you for your WhatsApp. If you could just respond to me there, that would be awesome. Thanks so much, Sarah May. That's perfect.
Andrew, you already had mine. Do you still have it? Do you need me to resend it to you?
One moment. Let me just check.
We had exchanged our
should have it. Let me just check.
Okay.
Got it. All right. You should be in the group now.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, I thought I sent my WhatsApp on email already.
Let me have a quick look. Yeah, I've got it now. I see that. Thanks so much.
Okay, no problem.
Buenos días.
Good morning. Buenos días. Oops. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Almost there.
¿Cuántos somos?
Somos 13 personas en total, pero yo creo que una persona no asistirá hoy porque es su cumpleaños.
Ah, vale, ok.
Sí, de más al final y le podemos saludar. Okay. Good. Okay. So Casey, I've sent you a private message asking for your WhatsApp because I'm currently missing that. So if you just reply to me in your messages, that would be awesome. And Brenda?
Yes.
I tried putting your number into WhatsApp, but it didn't work. Do you have the WhatsApp application downloaded on your phone?
Yes.
Oh, how odd. Maybe the number is incorrect because it appears in my contacts, but it doesn't seem to work with the WhatsApp.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's Panama. I don't know.
That'll be why. Yeah, that'll be why. So what's the area code for Panama?
507.
Perfect. All right. I'll give that a go now and see if that works. Super. All set. Great. So good morning, everyone. It's lovely to have you all here today. I thought I'd give people just a couple of minutes to ask any questions that they might do while the final people are coming in and joining us this morning. So does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask?
I was going to ask, I was looking at the vocabulary and there are 2 words for calves. And so they mean exactly the same. You can choose either.
As far as I mean, in my experience, they're used pretty interchangeably. It's not something that's specific to one area of Spanish speaking or another. So yeah, you can use those interchangeably. So pantorrillas and gemelos, right?
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I had a question. The plural for planta del pie, would it be like de los plantas de los pies?
Las plantas, because it's feminine, de los pies. Las plantas de los pies.
Las plantas de los pies.
Las.
Okay.
That's right. That's correct.
Okay.
All right, great. So perfect. What we're going to start to do today is just share some of those words that we learned for our homework. So let me share my screen with you and we can add them to our little chart. Let's see. Okay, perfect. So let's start with Jackie. Jackie, what was one of the words that you learned for homework last night? It doesn't have to be something we looked at yesterday. It could be a brand new word, but just one of the words.
Sure. So I was pretty familiar with the words that we went over, and so I looked up words for the different fingers.
Awesome.
So for meñique, anular, medio, índice y pulgar. Estos son las palabras que iba a memorizar.
Good, awesome. So let's pop those down. So here's a picture of a hand. Can everybody see the hand on their screen? Yeah?
Yeah.
Good, excellent. So each finger in Spanish has a different name, just as we do in English. So in English, our pinky finger is the little finger, right? So for the little finger on your hand and also your little toe, they use the word el meñique. El meñique. So as I say, you can use that both for the little finger on your hand and also your little toe. Moving along the hand, what do we usually refer to the second finger next to our little finger in English?
Ring finger.
Your ring finger. So it's the same in Spanish. So they say el dedo, which is the finger, anular. And that comes from the word anillo. So un anillo is a ring, and your ring finger is el dedo anular. Very good. So let me pop that next to the right finger. I kind of like the next one. In Spanish, for some reason, they see a connection between your middle finger and your heart. So they say el dedo corazón. So that's kind of cute. The index finger, again, in Spanish, is very similar. So it's el índice. And then finally, we want a word for the thumb. And the thumb in Spanish is el pulgar. Good. We already saw a couple of other words yesterday. We saw a word for the palm. Can anybody remind me what the word for the palm is?
Palma.
La palma. Good. And what about a word for the wrist?
Muñeca.
La muñeca. Very good.
Yeah.
Excellent. So those are some useful words for different parts of the hand. Good. Tori, what was one of the words that you learned from last night?
All right, I'm gonna pick the hardest one to me on my page to pronounce in my mind. La articulación.
Good. So, una articulación is, let's see if we can find here. Oh, we just pop it down here as well. Una articulación, what might that mean in Spanish?
The joint.
Good. Una articulación is one of your joints. Yeah, very good. It sounds a bit like the word articulation in English. Sarah May, what was one of the words that you learned?
Well, the ones I'm having trouble remembering are la espinilla,
Mm-hmm.
the shin, right? And I think it's el empeine.
Okay.
Like
Good.
the,
So la espinilla is your shin, the front part of your lower leg. And el empeine, can anybody remind me what the empeine is?
it's like the instep, right?
Not the instep. No.
No?
It's the top of your foot.
It's the top part of your foot. Yeah, because your instep would be el arco del pie, right? And the empeine is the sort of the flat surface on the top of your foot.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah? Great. Okay. Good. Let's see. Who's coming next? Brenda, what was one of the new words that you learned last night?
I still don't think I have it. I keep going over it. Is ischiotibialis.
Very nice. So those are the muscles that originate in your ischium and they attach into the tibia. So they are your hamstrings, los isquiotibiales. And you might say, Andrew, but there's one of the hamstrings actually attaches into the fibula. Yes, that's true. But they use the word isquiotibiales in Spanish for the hamstrings. Okay, thank you so much, Brenda. Brittany.
Los omoplatos.
Good. And the stress in that word is on the second O, so it's los omoplatos.
Is there an accent there? then?
No, as I said to you, the rules that I gave you yesterday are very, very generalized and they don't apply for every single word, right? If you do want to get into like Spanish accenting, there's a whole field of grammar that's attached to that and it's horrendously complicated. But yeah, so just be aware that omoplatos, the stress comes on the second O. Okay, Helen, what was one of the words that you learned for homework last night?
I was interested in the spine, so la columba y las zonas, la lumbar, la cervical, la thoracica.
Good. So I'll pause you there. So when we say those three areas, it's usual to repeat the word zona. So you would say, okay, protegemos la zona cervical, protegemos la zona torácica, protegemos la zona lumbar.
And it's and then it would, I wasn't sure about the pronunciation of this, but it's el sacro e el coxis.
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 Yeah.
So this is similar to English. Coxis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. So el sacro, the sacrum, and el coxis. Very good. Thanks so much, Helen. Good. Do we have Megan? I think Megan is currently away. Selena, what was one of the words that you learned for homework last night?
I was also very much trying to, I was telling everyone about isquiotibiales, but another word would be los isquiones.
Los isquiones, good. So your sit bones. Well done. Thanks so much, Selena. Veronica, what was one of the words that you learned last night?
A lot of the same ones that were mentioned, but another one was la ingle.
La ingle, very good. Which is your...
Is that how we're pronouncing it?
Mm-hmm. Well done. La ingle, the groin. Well done. So let me just pop that on our slide here. La ingle, the groin. Very good. All right. Stanley, what was one of the words that you learned last night?
La entrepierna.
Very good. So that's again the inner thighs. So it's something that you might use, for example, in Janu Shirshasana, when you might talk about placing the sole of the foot en la entrepierna, on your inner thigh. All right. Thanks so much, Stan. Sam.
I was looking at the hand. We didn't go over this before, but the back of the hand, el dorso de la mano.
Good. Yeah. So let's pop that down as well over here. El dorso de la mano. So dorso is a word that you use for anything that's kind of like on the back of something. So in English, you'd have a dorsal fin, right, for a fish or a dolphin or whatever. So here, el dorso de la mano is the back of the hand. Another word that it occurs to me to add is the tips of the fingers. Does anybody know what the word for the tips of the fingers is? Las yemas de los dedos. Yeah, las yemas are the tips of your fingers. Good, awesome. Thanks so much, Sam. Casey, what was one of the words that you learned last night? One more time?
Las caderas.
Awesome, yeah. So I don't know if we put that down yesterday. Let's just have a look. Las caderas is a super useful word. So I'll add it to our little man here, and it's the hips. Las caderas.
I have a question. If I'm talking about the inner thighs, then you say las entrepiernas, like a right?
Mm-hmm. So if you want to talk about the inner thighs, you could say la entrepierna, which is kind of the area up towards the groin, or you could say la parte interior de los muslos, or you could say la cara interior de los muslos. Yeah, and I think that would get the message across. Good. Okay.
Sorry, Andrew, can you repeat the fingertips for me one more time?
Yeah,
Please?
so let's go back to the hand. So do you see on the screen there, las yemas de los dedos?
Thank you very much.
Andrew, does yemas mean tips?
Yeah, it's the tips of your fingers. That's correct.
Yeah, but the word could be used. I just wondered if it's a special word for fingertips, or it's the word that would be used for.
La yema. I haven't really heard it in other contexts. I'm certain it probably is used in other contexts. There's a really great app or website called Linguee, linguee.com. Let me just see if I can share that with you on the screen as well. Good. Seem to be having a little difficulty with that. But anyway, so when I type in yemas, it comes up to me with egg yolks, buds, and fingertips. Yeah, so las yemas del huevo is, of course, what you would use in cooking, your egg yolks. And yeah.
Interesting.
I think those are the main uses that we get for yemas.
Can you spell the site? Linguee?
Yeah, linguee.com. And the nice thing about that is it's not only a dictionary, but it actually gives you a series of examples of usage underneath. And they take it from all over the internet. So you can go down and you can see, well, are the majority of sources using the context that I need from my word? Because sometimes we think we've translated it right, but we've actually got like what's called a false friend. So it can be useful just to check, you know, that other people are using the word as you would like. Great, well done. Phoenix, what was one of the words that you learned last night?
Hi, one of the words that I learned last night was La barbilla or
Good,
mentón.
la barbilla, super. And what was the other word that we could use in place of barbilla?
Mentón.
Mentón, very nice. Well done, everybody. So what I would like you to do now is to make a grid, okay? So take a piece of paper and I'll just demonstrate for you. So can you all see the whiteboard now on your screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what I would like you to do is just to draw, let me see if I can draw one here. Just a very simple 9-square grid, like so, okay? And in each one of the squares in the grid, you're going to choose one of the words that we learned yesterday. So I'll share my screen again so you can just check with those words. So in each one of the 9 spaces, you can put one of the words that we studied last night, okay? So I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, 2 more minutes. So remember that you should have 9 words in total selected, 1 for each space in your grid.
Right, Andrew, did we, oh, sorry, I've got it. Never mind. Apologize.
All right. So you can all see me now. I'm just going to turn my computer around so that you can see me properly. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate different parts of my body, and then I want you to call out the correct word in Spanish for those parts. If you've got one of those parts, you can mark it up on your grid. Obviously, 3 in a row is una línea, and if you fill your whole grid, you've got bingo. All right? So let's start off. Now, can everybody see me okay on my camera?
I just see your face. There's something, I just see your face in the grid.
If you double click on my camera, can sharing
oh,
my
I see. I just double click on you. There we go. I see what you mean.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. So the first part that I'm going to share today is this one. Anybody tell me what this is?
El codo.
El codo. Very good. C-O-D-O. El codo. Very nice. Okay. The second word is?
Antebrazo.
El antebrazo. Very good. I'll just write these down so that I don't do them twice. Perfect. So we've got codo. We've got antebrazo. Good. Okay. Next word.
Cuello.
Cuello. Good. So remember that a double L is pronounced like a Y, so it's cuello. Well done. Okay, there's 2 options for the next one.
El rostro.
El rostro.
El rostro is one, and what would the other be?
La cara.
La cara. Good. C-A-R-A. La cara. And remember that the R is very soft. So especially if you have quite a strong accent and you tend to roll your R's, it's a good idea to make that R sound quite light. R, 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 r. La cara. So let's all pronounce that together. So I'll go first, and then you can follow. La cara.
La cara.
La cara.
Cara.
La cara.
La cara.
La cara.
El rostro.
El rostro.
Rostro.
El rostro.
Rostro.
El rostro.
Rostro.
Beautiful. Cara and rostro. Beautiful. The next one again has two possible options.
Orejas.
Orejas. Oídos.
Good. So las orejas. Good. And los oídos. So what was the difference between una oreja and un oído?
Side and inner ear.
Oídos.
So the oídos are associated with the verb oír, which is to hear, and las orejas are the sort of the skin and cartilage part of your ears. Good. So oreja and oído. Good. And one that we another one that we did yesterday. So talking about articulaciones, talking about joints. We've got our
Rodillas.
rodillas. Good. Rodillas. Well done. What are your rodillas? Your
Knees.
beautiful. Las rodillas, the knees. All right. So two possible answers for this one.
Pantorrillas.
Pantorrillas. Gemelos.
Good. So we've got either las pantorrillas. Yeah. So again, it's a double L. Pantorrillas, or the word for twins, which is
Gemelos.
gemelos. That's obviously masculine, just an O-S. Good. Well done. All
What's
right.
the other word? Plantorillas with a P?
Pantorrillas. Pantorrillas.
Pantorillas.
Okay. Next one.
Las caderas.
Caderas.
Las caderas, and I'll also allow
La cintura.
la pelvis.
La pelvis.
So las caderas or la pelvis. Has anyone got a line yet?
No.
Still not. All right. So let's move around to the back of the pelvis. And we've got, what is this area at the top of the back of the pelvis? El sacro. And beneath the sacro, you've got a?
Coxis.
El coccyx. Very good. So sacro and coccyx.
O la cola, ¿sí?
Or la cola. Why not?
La cola, yeah.
Very good.
What about los glúteos?
Los gluteos would be the muscles to the either side. Yeah?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Well done, los gluteos. Okay. What about this part of the body?
El pecho.
El pecho. And on your pecho, you've got your?
Las costillas.
Your costillas. Very good.
A line.
I got a line.
I got a line.
You've won the valuable prize of self-respect.
Yay!
So, moving back up, what do we have here?
Los hombros.
Los hombros. Yeah. Good. Can anybody name the muscles that we've got on the top of our shoulders?
The scapula.
What are the muscles? We've got three. One on the front.
Los bíceps.
Biceps.
Los deltoides.
Deltoides.
Yeah, so your deltoid muscles.
Deltoides.
Good. Let's move on to the back of the shoulders now. What do you have on the back of your shoulders?
Los omoplatos.
Los omóplatos or
Escapulas.
las escápulas. Is there a difference between omóplatos and escápulas, anatomically speaking?
Shoulder blades and scapula.
No, I don't think so.
No, they are one and the same thing. Your shoulder blades and your scapula are the same. Okay. What about let's have a look. What about the word for your forehead?
Frente.
La frente. Very good. And moving down the face, what's this?
La mandíbula.
Mandíbula.
La mandíbula. So your mandible, your jaw, la mandíbula. Very good. What about this in the center of your face?
El nariz.
Nariz.
La
Oh.
nariz.
La nariz.
Andrew, can you take a step back? I can't see your head.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
Nice. All right. Good. Let's move into the abdominal area now. What words can you remember for the area of the abdomen?
La cintura.
So la cintura, what would that be?
The waist.
Waist.
The waist. Good.
Abdominales.
El ombligo.
Now abdominales are like abdominal exercises. Yeah.
Vale.
Said abdominales. So it's better to say just el abdomen.
El abdomen.
Abdomen.
Yeah. Good. What about your belly button?
El ombligo.
Ombligo.
El ombligo. Very good.
El ombligo.
El ombligo.
Nice.
El ombligo.
Okay. What's the word for your spinal column then?
La columna.
Una vertebral.
Columna. So you have to be a little careful of pronouncing that word. The reason being that we tend to say things like columna in English, and it sounds a little weird. So it's columna. La columna. So let's repeat together. Columna.
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 Beautiful. Well done.
What's
Okay.
vertebrae?
Sorry?
Vertebrae is just,
Yeah, una vertebra is a vertebrate. Yeah.
yeah.
So quite often you'll hear in yoga class, especially when we're moving between Uttanasana, the forward fold, and Urdhvasana, which is with the arms raised above the head. Quite often you'll hear teachers saying, subimos vertebra por vertebra. So let's raise vertebrate by vertebrate. Good.
So, Andrew,
Yeah.
this might be an obvious question, but so the Sanskrit words, like, you don't you say the Sanskrit word, you're not going to translate that, right? You just say the.
So that's very much a question that different yoga schools have different answers to. Personally, I quite like using Sanskrit because it's kind of a universal yoga language, so no matter what country you're in. Uttanasana generally looks the same. But you may be in a school that says, well, you should always translate. And in that case, you might want to say, Uttanasana, la pinza. So la pinza is the word that they would use in Spanish to translate that. If you look in your handout, so if you look, the handout that I sent you, they have, there's a page that says shapes, formas, and asanas. I've given some common translations there.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Good. Okay, let's do a couple more, and then we'll.
Can you just repeat the subimos vertebra? Is it a or por?
Vertebra por vertebra.
Por.
So the word por in that context.
Yes, by.
By. Yeah, that's correct. Good. All right. Awesome. So what's missing? What words have we not talked about?
Have we done the word for the head? Or did I miss it?
So we did the word for hips, which is caderas, and pelvis, la pelvis.
No, cabeza.
La cabeza. Good. So your cabeza is your head. What about for the lower leg and ankle? What's the word for this part of the leg?
Espinilla.
La espinilla. Yeah, is your shin. Good. And what about here? What's this?
El tobillo.
El tobillo. Very good. Below your tobillo, you've got your.
Empeine.
Yeah, so this empeine is the top of the
Peine.
foot. Good. Just check that my foot's reasonably clean. What's this part of the foot here?
Planta del pie.
Planta.
La planta del pie. Very good. And this part here?
Talón.
Talón.
El talón. Very good. El talón. Has anyone got bingo yet?
Oh, yeah.
We didn't. Oh, we didn't do so.
Yeah, there's still a couple missing. So what about the different parts of the spine? What's this part of the spine down here?
La zona lumbar.
La zona lumbar. Good. Up here?
La zona torácica.
La zona torácica and?
La zona cervical.
La zona cervical. Very good. Well done. Okay. What's the word for this part of the face?
La boca.
La boca. Very good. And what about for the whole of the body? Hip and neck?
Cuerpo.
Torso.
El torso or el tronco. Good.
Ahora tengo bingo.
Super. Well done. Enhorabuena. Felicidades. Okay, well done, everybody. So we're going to move on now to look at verbs. So let me bring that. Okay. It's Surya Namaskar A and Surya Namaskar B. So if you've got your own handouts there, it might be useful to open them up now. Because what I'd like you to do, I'm going to divide you into 4 groups. And what I'd like you to do in your groups is to, first of all, draw your stick figures for Sun Salutation A. Okay? And then next to each stick figure, I want you to do a brainstorm as a group. And what I want you to think about is in English, so not Spanish, in English, what verbs might you use for each posture? So for example, when I'm doing Urdhva Hastasana, I might use the word raise, yeah? I might use the word raise for the arms, yeah? So I'll just write down next to that in English, raise, okay? So what are the 2 things that you're going to do in your groups?
Draw stick figures
and write our verbs.
Write English verbs.
So draw the stick figures and then write some English verbs that are relevant for each posture. Beautiful. I'm going to give you about 4 minutes for that. So let's divide you into rooms now. All right, beautiful. So I think you should be getting a request now to join the rooms.
Yes.
Let me know when you guys are ready.
I'm mostly ready. I'm just writing out the Sanskrit.
So for Tadasana, I usually tell people to stand at the front of their mats.
Let's stand.
Stand.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Stand. I may say to people to like root into the ground.
Yeah. And then with Erdva, lift, raise, reach.
Yeah.
Fold.
Fold.
For Uttanasana.
Lower.
Dive, depending on how active the class is.
Yeah.
I
Lower.
hinge from the hips all the time.
Hinge.
I do too.
That's a great one.
Okay. Arda, I say lengthen a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And extend.
Plank pose, chaturanga.
We already said lower.
Like place, step, bend.
Step.
Yeah.
Bend is, yeah, that we haven't used that one yet.
But I think maybe parallel and handy or
But that's not a verb. Press. Like to press into
I would
the
say
ground.
press is a good one for up dog too.
Yeah. Chaturanga.
Yeah.
Bend. Okay. Anything else for chaturanga?
I can't think of any. What do I say? Am I just on autopilot now?
You have to like go through the whole sequence to remember.
Right.
Okay.
Down dog.
Well, we haven't done Bhujangasana yet. So upward facing dog.
I said, press.
Yeah. Some of the ones we've already used, I guess. Press, lift,
Press, lift.
raise.
open, like you open.
Open's good. Yes. Expand, I don't think we've used that one yet.
Yeah.
Anything else for Bhujangasana? All right, let's move on to the classic Adho Mukha Svanasana.
Down dog. Lift, like lift, reach.
Lift, reach, raise, tilt.
Tilt.
Close. Like if to close the rib cage,
Okay.
Did we have release anywhere yet? No. Let's add release.
Lower.
Lower, yeah.
Maybe maintain a straight spine.
I like root down.
In Spanish.
I like root down, yeah, to root.
And then, I mean, just the verb like to stand, stand.
Yeah. Then Uttanasana again, fold, or release. I'll often say release.
Yeah. Yeah, I say hang all the time. Or hang.
Push back. Lift your hips. Straighten your legs.
Straighten. Oh.
Lengthen.
Lengthen the spine.
Like you just like press into your hands.
Press, yeah. Bring the ankles gently, sorry, bring the heels down, bring.
Right.
You could bend slightly in the knees.
Bend.
Um,
I'm realizing that we didn't say breathe for any of these.
breathe is all of them, yeah. Okay, 1 minute, 1 minute.
Okay.
Hi
Yeah,
there.
I just got disconnected.
Yeah, it seems to happen when I invite you into the breakout rooms. Is there a
Yeah,
button that invites you to click?
Pardon me?
Is there a button that it invites you to click so that you can?
There is, and then it just goes fooey. I'm thinking, I'm doing this on my computer screen. I'm in the country. There's a cell phone like way the hell and who knows where. The bandwidth is not great. So I'm going to try it on my iPad. I'll try it also on my iPad, but I didn't want to start doing that in the middle of the thing.
No problem.
Yeah, but I have only one cell. It depends which way the cell tower, and it depends which way the wind blows.
Okay, so welcome back, everybody. I'm going to share my screen again now. So let's have a look at Sun Salutation A, Surya Namaskar A. So can you all see that there on your screens?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce these verbs to you in what we call the infinitive. So has anyone heard that word before, an infinitive?
Yes.
Who can tell me what an infinitive is?
The equivalent in English is the to form of the verb.
Okay.
Like to run.
Mm-hmm. And so what do we use the infinitive for?
Actions.
Well, to do something.
To describe something.
As a base to conjugate.
Exactly. Yeah. Good. So someone else is a language teacher, I can see, and that's the answer that I was looking for. So the infinitive is basically a base form, a base, or let's say root form of the word, and we can then do what we call conjugate. Okay. So conjugate. Ooh, cougar now. Conjugate. Is to put the word in its different forms, right? So we can put it in the present tense, in the you form, singular, for example, or we could put it in the past tense, in the we form. That's conjugating a verb, okay? So I'm going to give you this base or root form, and then we'll talk about how we're going to conjugate things later on. So, okay. Let's start with Phoenix. Phoenix, what was one of the words that you used for Tadasana?
One of the words we used for Tadasana was
in
breathe.
English, yeah. So what you just brainstormed.
Breathe.
Awesome. Why not? That's a nice word to start with. So to breathe in Spanish is respirar. Okay. So there we go. Respirar, to breathe. And while we're at it, we might as well talk about the words that we use for inhalation and exhalation. So can anyone help me with the word for to inhale?
Inhalar.
Good. Now have a look carefully here. You can see that there's an H in the word, right? And in English we say inhale, so we make this ha noise. In Spanish, the H is silent, so it's inhalar. Yeah, so you don't hear the H at all in Spanish. To inhale. And it's the same with the word for to breathe out, exhalar, to breathe out or just to exhale. Okay, beautiful. Thanks, Phoenix. Casey, was there another word that you used for Tadasana?
Root?
To root. Okay. So I'm going to put the word to root here. We'll talk a little bit more about how we can use words like root in English and Spanish a bit later on. Okay. When we're using the word root, it sounds very much like the noun in Spanish for a root. Does anybody know what the word for a root in Spanish is?
Raíz.
Un raíz. So in Spanish, the word for to root something is enraizar. To root, enraizar. And here we would normally expect some kind of object, right? So something that's going to receive the action of rooting. So if you think in English, if I say to you root, what are you going to be rooting normally into the floor?
The feet.
Feet. In other postures, it might be your hands. So it's something to do with your face. Sorry, so it's to do with your base, not your face. So enraizamos, for example, los pies. Enraizamos los pies. Root the feet.
So Andrew,
Yeah.
is that the same word as grounding, let's say?
In what context? Can you give me an example sentence?
Sure. Ground your feet. That's why I thought of it. If you're-
Exactly, yeah.
Then
So
you're
it's very
grounding.
connected with this idea of connecting something with the earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to ground or to root would be used interchangeably here.
Ah, okay.
Okay. Thank you so much. Good. Okay. Sam, what word might you use for Urdhva-Hastasana? What verb might be useful?
Raise.
To raise. Good. And do you know any word in Spanish that you might use for to raise? Hello? Well, so I'll share with you what I use. So there's 3 or 4 words in Spanish for the idea of raising. So subir is one of them. Good. Elevar is another one. Subir, elevar. Let me think, what else do we use? Anybody else? Any other words that we might use in Spanish for to raise?
Levantar.
Levantar, there we go. So those are the 3 words that I think are probably most common for to raise. Yeah.
My question is, would you use levantarse, the reflexive, or you want to get into that another time, or we don't use it?
We'll get into reflexives another time. What we're doing here is really just putting words that we can use with objects, okay? So here, the object would be, you would raise either the hands, las manos, or los brazos, right? So you're raising either your arms or your hands. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Beautiful. Thanks, Sam. Stan, what would be one of the words that you would use for uttanasana, to forward fold?
To fold?
Yeah. So in English, you would say to fold or to
bend.
Lengthen.
Bend, to lengthen. Good. So let's look at a couple of those. In English, would you agree that there's a difference between the word to bend and the word to fold?
Mm-hmm.
And what is that difference? Can anybody articulate what that difference is in English?
Seems like a fold, like there's some kind of like hinge or crease, like access of folding, in this case, like the hips, as opposed to just like bending something in space.
Right.
So,
you can also say bend at the hips.
We'll come back to that a little bit later on. Let's just stick with the verbs for now. So bending, generally speaking, has less of an angle than folding. So when you fold something, you're generally doubling something right back over on top of itself, right? Whereas when you're bending, it could be a quite shallow angle. So we often talk in yoga about micro bending the knees, which is a very, very small angle indeed, right? So they make that distinguish as well in Spanish. So the word for to bend is flexionar. Flexionar, yeah. And the word for to fold, I often think about folding as bending something over double, right? And so the word in Spanish is doblar. So doblar is to fold. Flexionar and doblar. So they're both very useful words there. Okay. Thanks, Dan. Veronica, when we are in Ardha Uttanasana, that's kind of a tricky one, isn't it? How would you lead that movement between Uttanasana, a forward fold, and Ardha Uttanasana?
I had straighten.
So straighten might be a good word. Okay.
I also had gaze.
Oh, why not? Let's put gaze down there as well. So straighten, has anybody seen, what is the word for straight as an adjective in Spanish?
Enderezar.
But what about the adjective?
Oh, sorry.
Derecho.
Derecho. Good. So the verb for to straighten actually has this word derecho in it, okay? So it starts off with the prefix en, which is often used for a movement bringing something into a different state. Dere, which comes from derecho, and sar, which is the termination of the word, so enderezar. So straighten, and that would take an object, for example, la columna. Enderezamos la columna. Good.
I just have a quick question for the bending and folding. I often hear for the knees it's doblar, but technically we're not folding the knees.
I think it depends on what context. If you're sitting in something like Vajrasana, hero's pose on your mat, then I would use the verb doblamos las rodillas, right?
Yeah.
So you've got a full fold there. Whereas if I'm coming into chair pose, Utkatasana, I would probably choose to use the word flexionamos las rodillas.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, Spanish speakers, as with any language, they're not going to do things according to the rules 100%. People are always going to kind of misuse words, which is fine. You know, so you'll probably hear people saying, micro doblamos las rodillas, you know, micro fold your knees, which to me in English sounds really weird, but I've definitely heard it in Spanish. Okay.
Question about when you're saying, you're always using the we form, like doblamos.
Ooh, good question. We'll deal with that in relation.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So, gaze. So to gaze, mirar. Yeah? So remember that there is always a difference between to look or to watch, let's say, and to look or to gaze or to look. So the word that we want to use here is mirar. Ver is not a word that we want to be using in this context, because that's more associated with watching. Good, thank you, Veronica. Selena, what was one of the words that you used to come back? Well, let's say that we want to come into high plank from Ardha Uttanasana.
We said step.
Good. So what word are we going to use for to step?
Pasamos, caminamos.
So I think the most common usage that I've seen in Spanish is dar un paso. Okay, dar un paso is to literally take a step. Right? To step. Dar un paso. Okay? You might use the word caminamos for sure. That is to walk. Yeah? So caminar. to walk. Okay, but I think that probably the best one in this context is damos un paso, to step. We're probably not going to use the word pisar. Yeah, that's not a word that I would recommend in this context. Pisar is to kind of stand on something. So if someone stepped on your toe, for example, ouch, me pisaste el pie. Yeah, you stood on my foot. So pisar is not a word that I would recommend, but dar un paso, definitely.
What about for the mat, like to stand on the mat?
Pisamos el tapete. Again, if you're really emphasizing that action of kind of stepping on something with your foot, then maybe. But if you're just trying to tell someone, let's, come to a standing position in the mat, then you'd probably want to find a different phrase, right? So quite often the phrase that I would use is something like empezar de pie. Yeah, to start in a standing position. Yeah. Start in a standing position. Empezamos de pie. Let's begin in a standing position. Okay, well done. So let's put all of that to one side for now and make another little text box. Okay, so thank you, Selena. Let's move on to Helen. When you come from high plank to low plank, what word might you use?
Lower.
Lower, excellent. Bajar, lower. And you've got different options here because some people lower, they like to come into full chaturanga. Other people like to do knees, chest, and chin. So you can choose. You can say, bajamos a chaturanga. Or if you wanted the people to lower their knees, chest, and chin, bajamos rodillas, pecho, y mentón. Right? So you have lots of options there. Bajar is a very versatile verb in this context. Okay, thank you, Helen. Brittany, what would you do to come from chaturanga to upward facing dog?
Just kidding. Sorry, you couldn't hear me. Chaturanga into upward facing dog.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of what verb I do use currently, but we had one for when we're in there, like to open, like once you get up to open your chest. Yeah. But we were like,
let's pop that down. Open. What about maybe a useful word to come into up dog?
Like shift.
Shift. I think we can even use maybe one of the words that we've already got. So I would use maybe to raise. So elevamos el pecho, subimos el pecho, levantamos el pecho. Or I might talk about the arms, enderezamos los brazos, right? To straighten the arms. Because I think those are perhaps, you can't really go wrong. If you tell someone from knees, chest, and chin, or from chaturanga to straighten their arms and raise their chest, they're going to be going in the right direction. Yeah?
I might also say press the mat away, so push or press.
Yeah, again, that's not something that I think translates very prettily into Spanish. Press the mat away. Yeah, because you're really pressing yourself away from the mat if you think about the action, right? The mat stays in the same place. So
what about
you
lift?
could say to push or press, yeah, is empujar or presionar. You could say, for example, empujamos or presionamos las palmas en la colchoneta, press the hands into the mat. But again, really, it's a bit of a vague cue, that, right? Because you're already pressing your hands into the mat in both of those poses. So for me, the easiest thing is to say, raise the chest or straighten the arms. But again, if you do want to use the words push or press, they are empujar and presionar.
Is
Okay.
Is there a word for, we might have said it already, but just like to bring, like
There
in the style
is, and we're going to deal with that in one moment in
Okay.
Adho Mukha Svanasana.
Okay.
Good. So to open is, can anybody help me with that? Open?
Abrir.
Abrir. And then the opposite of open is
Cerrar.
cerrar. So that's a double R, and it makes a R noise. You have to roll your R's in Spanish sometimes. So it's really important to be able to make that distinction in Spanish between cerrar and cerrar. The thing is, in English, if we come very late to the practice of rolling our R's, we don't really pay much mind to it, and it doesn't really sound very different to us. But to a Spanish speaker who's been learning since birth, the difference between pero and perro, that's a very, very obvious distinction to them, yeah? So although it's something that's really challenging to do, to roll your R's, it's something that I definitely recommend practicing, finding some tutorials on YouTube and just, spending some time in front of your bathroom mirror making some silly noises. Okay. Good. Now, Stan just asked me, is there a word for to bring? Now, if I were to ask you, Stan, what does the word bring mean to you?
In yoga, it's to me like to draw. I would say like draw your chest between your arms or something.
So to draw or to bring. For me, if I was going to articulate that in English, I would say it has the idea of making one thing come closer to another. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So in English, it would be wrong, I think, to say, bring your hips up and back into downward facing dog. Because you're actually creating more distance between your hips and your sort of heart center than, if you just stay in a neutral position. So in Spanish, there are two words, right? There is one word that means to bring something closer and to take something away. Okay?
Okay.
So to bring something closer in Spanish, can anybody help me out with that?
Acercar.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. That's not the word I'm looking for in this context.
Traer.
Traer. Good. And then to take something away, so if you go into a coffee shop in Spain or in a Latin-speaking country and you say, could I get that to go, please? What word might you use?
Llevar.
Good. So it's really important to make the distinction between those two verbs in yoga. Traer is to bring something closer to heart center, right? Llevar is to take something away from heart center. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So imagine that I'm in plank and I want to come into downward facing dog. Am I going to use the word traer for the hips, or am I going to use the word llevar for the hips?
Llevar.
Yeah, because you're bringing the hips away from you, right? You're pushing them upwards and backwards into downward facing dog. So the phrase that I would use, and again, don't get too caught up on directions today because we're going to deal with that tomorrow. But I would say, llevamos las caderas, and then I would use the phrases upwards and backwards. So hacia arriba y hacia atrás. Okay, so that's the phrase that I would use to most easily bring people into downward facing dog. Does anybody have any questions about that? What might be an example of when I might use the word traer in that context then? What posture or what action might be useful for traer?
Traer el pie entre las manos.
Very good. So if everybody can see me in the camera, I don't know if you can. Let me just get my own camera up. Good. Okay. So imagine that I'm here in my runner's lunge, right? And I want to create this action with my right foot. I would use the verb llevar. Llevamos el pie derecho hacia atrás. Okay? Then I wanted to step forwards again. I would use the verb traer. Traemos el pie derecho entre las manos. Bring the right foot between the hands. Traemos el pie izquierdo entre las manos. Bring the left foot between the hands. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Good. So that's a useful distinction between traer and llevar.
And Andrew?
Yeah.
Is there a word then for lengthen?
There is indeed a word for lengthen. So the word in Spanish for long, okay, an adjective to mean long, is largo, okay? So, la columna está muy larga. The spine is really long. If we want a verb for to lengthen, we're going to use the verb alargar, alargar, to lengthen. So a very, very common phrase, for example, for Ardha Uttanasana or also for downward facing dog is alargamos la columna. Yeah?
Yeah.
Let's lengthen the spine. Good, well done. Okay, Brenda, I think we're in downward facing dog. We want to now come forward to Ardha Uttanasana. What language would you use?
Step.
Good, so do you remember the word that we used for step before?
Dar un paso.
Excellent, so damos un paso entre las manos. You might even say, miramos entre las manos, look between the hands, y damos un paso hacia adelante, and take a step forwards. Again, for those of you who are not very certain about your directions and prepositions, not to worry, we're going to deal with those tomorrow. Okay, thank you so much, Brenda. Sarah May, we're in Ardha Uttanasana and we're going to fold into Uttanasana now. What word might you use?
Well, we already had fold and bend.
Mm-hmm.
Is hinge a different word?
So hinge is a word that we use in English to mean what? What are we trying to say there?
Like the closure of, it is like fold, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and generally what we're trying to, the concept that we're trying to express with folding is that we're doing it generally with a flat back. If you're hinging, if you think about hinge, the two parts of the hinge stay straight as you move them, right? So what I would normally do, if I wanted to really express that, I would say something like, nos doblamos con la espalda recta. Yeah? So, nos doblamos con, with la espalda recta, with a flat back.
Okay.
Good. Okay, thank you so much, Sarah May. Tori, what would you use now to come from Uttanasana into Urdhva Hastasana?
Oh gosh, we've used so many of the words.
Reverse swan dive. Let's avoid that one for today.
we've used everything that I've written down, but one thing that I had written was tilt.
Tilt.
I know it's not relevant to this transition.
It's not a word that I would use for this.
Okay.
If you do want to use tilt, it's inclinar. Okay, to tilt. So you might quite often speak about tilting the pelvis. So inclinamos la pelvis hacia adelante, hacia atrás. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I would just use a word like subir or elevar. Subimos el torso, elevamos los brazos. Okay, to finish, I think it's Jackie's turn to finish. How might you talk about joining the palms in heart center?
To join untar.
Juntar, good.
Juntar.
So juntamos las palmas, juntar, to join. And then you might like to specify where. So for example, en el centro del pecho or en el corazón. Good. All right. So we've got a nice little collection of language there. Hello?
Can I just ask if you'd say place your hands together, you would, or place the hands on the floor, place?
Yes, place is actually a very, very useful word as well. Quite often when people start speaking Spanish, they use the verb poner, which is to put. But for me, poner is something that we really use when you've got an object and you just want to put it down somewhere. So, ¿Dónde pongo mi taza de té? Ah, ponlo por ahí. Like, put it over there. If we want to be a little bit more elegant with placing our hands, so think about the difference in English between to put and to place. When we talk about placing in English, we're generally talking about doing something with a little bit more care and accuracy. Am I right? So if you talk about placing the hands on the mat. So in that context, it's colocar. Place. Yeah? And for me, that's a slightly nicer word in Spanish to use than poner when we're doing our yoga practice.
Here, I have one other thought. So some of these are mostly like external actions, but as far as like cueing, like bring your attention to or like focus or feel, you is that a now thing?
That's a really nice point that's made by Stan, and I think it's worth spending just a very quick moment thinking about that. So with a lot of teacher trainings, they make a differentiation between action language, so language to produce physical action in the body, and language for reflection, introspection, and meditation. Because generally speaking, you want to create an action first with this idea of muscular energy, yeah, attention going inwards. And then you want to give people the opportunity for reflection, for introspection, and the attention can begin to expand once again. So generally we deal with the action words first of all, and then introspective words later, okay? So when it comes to words like centering the attention, placing the attention in a particular area, we're going to deal with that next week in the meditation module, which is Monday.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is there any other essential vocabulary you think that you might need for sun salutations?
Engage.
Engage, that's a nice one. So in English as well, when you engage something, you activate it, right? So the word in Spanish for to engage is activar. So for example, activamos el abdomen, yeah? Engage your core, engage your abdomen. Activamos los muslos, engage your thighs.
What about the opposite of that? Like, I mean, there's relajar, but what about like just to hang or like leaving?
Relajar, yeah, so good. Relajar is to relax. So for
Is it also to release?
We'll come back to that in a second. So relajar, you might use it for when you're in Tadasana, relajamos los hombros, relajamos la cara, etc., etc. If you want to release something, so releasing tension, releasing a posture, releasing the arm, we're going to use the verb soltar, to release. And that's connected with the noun soltura. Has anybody ever done salsa classes before?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in salsa classes, they quite often have sesiones de soltura, because in the West, we're really stiff. Our bodies move kind of like planks. Is quite often what they think what we look like when we're dancing our salsa. So they actually have classes de soltura, which are amazing, by the way. If you ever get the chance to go into a clase de soltura, you'll just spend your whole class like moving your joints in all of these different ways and creating fluidity in your body. So for a yoga practitioner, it's actually really good. And you might think, I'm pretty loose and relaxed and flexible. And you do a class of soltura and you'll feel, wow, my hips are really not as flexible and loose as I thought they were. So soltar is to release, soltura. And the things that you might release might be soltamos la postura, like let's release the pose, yeah? We might also release, soltamos la tensión, yeah? Releasing tension. Or you might like to say, soltamos los brazos. For example, if you're in a bind, right? You're in eagle arms, yeah? And you want to tell people, release the arms, soltamos los brazos. Questions?
What about to maintain? Good.
Yeah, so that's another word that's super, super useful in asana practice. It's going to take us a little while to learn how to really use it properly, but there's two solutions I'm going to give you. The first one is sostener, to sustain or stay in, okay? So for example, sostenemos la postura. The other word that we might use is mantener, to keep, yeah? So we might use a word like that. For example, if I wanted you to say, keep your shoulders over your wrists, I might say, mantenemos los hombros sobre las muñecas. Yeah? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Great. Perfect. Okay.
Hey, Andrew, I have two other words. I'm so sorry. Spread and pause. Are those verbs that can be used?
They are, but I'm going to leave us where we are today because we've got quite a few other things to cover and only 40 minutes to do so. But we're not going to, we will be looking at other verbs in future classes. So this is not like your lot. This is just what we're going to be using to get going today, okay? If in doubt, remember that you have a whole page of key action verbs, right? So if you look on the screen now, you've got abrir, abrazar, activar, alargar, alejar, alinear, apoyar, apretar, aflojar, agarrar, aguantar, alargar, etc., etc., etc. So just go through there and have a good look and then come to me with any questions, right? Okay, so the other thing that we need to take a look at today is declension, okay? So declension, sorry, not declension, conjugation. And this is something I'm going to say. You should really work on this according to your ability with Spanish. Now, if you are a bit more new to Spanish, yeah, you don't have a lot of confidence playing around with verbs, I want you to stick with the system that I'm about to present to you, okay? If you're an advanced speaker, we'll talk about that in a moment. So the problem with a lot of Spanish verbs is that they are irregular, right? So let me just see if I can. Okay, so a lot of verbs are irregular, So let's, for example, think about apretar. Apretar means to engage as well, yeah? But if I start to now bring that into different forms of the verb, into different tenses, the verb changes quite radically, and there's really no way to predict how that's going to happen. So for example, apretar, an I suddenly appears into it. Aprieto, I engage. So that starts to present us with a problem. Those of you who are not very confident with your verbs, you're in the middle of a class, you're guiding things at speed, oh my goodness, and you need to start thinking about how you're going to conjugate your verbs, you will get so lost. You'll be stuck, okay? So my advice to you is make it really, really easy for yourself and use the we form of the present tense. Because even if the verb is irregular, the we form is regular. So that's a quite a nice little trick. So I'll give you an example. How do we make the we form? So number one, we take the infinitive, right? Number two, we remove the R. And number three, we add the ending mos. And that's it. It's so, so easy. So for example, apretar. We take the infinitive, which is obviously apretar. Good. We remove the R, apreta, and we add mos. Apretamos. And that's it. There's no I, there's no irregular stem, it doesn't change. It's super easy, right? Give you another example. Caer. Okay, so caer is a verb that means to fall. Again, if I start putting that into other persons, an I and a G appear, caigo. Yeah? But if I put it into the we form, it's super easy. Caer, I take the infinitive, I remove the R, and I add mos, caemos. Easy, right? So for those of you who don't have a lot of confidence playing around with your verbs, make it easy for yourselves. Use the we form. Don't start to worry about using commands, about using the you form, about using the I form, about using different tenses. It's really not necessary. Your main goal here is not to show your proficiency with Spanish grammar. It's to lead somebody through a yoga posture at the end of the day. So keep that in mind. Yeah? The first thing you want to be really, really emphasizing is ease of communication, making your communication super clear. So use the we form in the singular and worry about all of the other forms of the verb in future months and years when you can really do that with proficiency without it bogging you down. Okay, so let's have a little go. Okay, you can see the list of, well, actually, let's go back to our Surya Namaskar. So, Jackie, can you see here we've got the verb respirar?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can you put that into the we form present tense?
Respiramos.
Good, so Jackie removed the R and she added mos. Good, Tori, inhalar.
Inhalamos.
Beautiful. Sarah May, exhalar.
Exhalamos.
Beautiful. Brenda, enraizar.
Enraizamos.
Beautiful. Brittany, subir.
Subiramos?
Now, just remember.
Subiremos, right? Because
you take the R off, and then you add mos.
Subimos.
Subimos. Excellent. Well done. Helen. Elevar.
Elevamos.
Good. Selena. Flexionar.
Flexionamos.
Good. Veronica. Doblar.
Doblamos.
Beautiful. Stan. Enderezar.
Enderezamos.
Beautiful. Sam. Mirar.
Miramos.
Beautiful. Casey. Inclinar.
Inclinamos.
Beautiful. And finally, Phoenix. Juntar.
Juntamos.
Excellent. So that's how, for the majority of you, I would recommend that you dealt with verbs for now, right? Those of you who are much more confident, right, in your Spanish, at that point, you can start adding some richness of language. So you can use the command form, yeah? So again, this takes a little bit more confidence to do. So for example, inhala, sube los brazos sobre la cabeza, exhala, palmas al pecho, dóblate, ¿ya? Con la inhalación, endereza tu columna. Exhalamos, pues exhala, coloca las manos en el suelo y da un paso hacia atrás. So when you start to get a little bit more confidence, you can start to play with the command form. You might also begin to play with the I form. So Andrea, who is the other teacher who'll be joining us for the course on Thursday, you'll see that she quite often teaches with the word I. So, yo me paro en la colchoneta, I stand up, y me relajo. Yeah, I relax myself. Inhalo, subo mis manos. I inhale, I raise my hands. Exhalo, bajo mis manos al pecho. Right? So again, you can use the I form as well. Okay, does that make sense?
Andrew, can I ask a quick question about that? Mm-hmm. So I've often wondered why so you're using a command form, the to command for a group of people. Why not? Does anybody ever use the ustedes form for a group of people?
Sounds, I mean, I don't know, I've not heard that, to be honest. But to make a plural command, it would sound so formal and awkward and stilted, I think, that, I mean, it's not something I've heard. If people are going to be using the command form, it's a direct command from one person to another.
Even though it's a group?
Even though it's a group.
Okay, thank you.
So forgive me if you already said this, but when we're using the we form in the present tense, you're basically just saying, we do this, we do that, we raise our arms.
And it sounds a little weird in English, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. But in Spanish, that's the nice thing. It doesn't sound weird in Spanish. It's quite common to go to a yoga class and hear people speaking in the we form. So, I mean, it really is just a godsend for yoga teachers, I think, that it just so happens that the we form is always so regular. And also that it's pretty common for teachers to guide that way. But again, you wouldn't hear a native speaker probably guiding their entire class in the we form. That would be unusual. But they will definitely understand you, and it will not sound odd if you do it for now. Yeah? And then further down the line, when you're super common with aprieta tus muslos, yeah? And you're super confident using the command form, by all means, do it. You know, I'm not suggesting that if you do have that ability with the language that you don't use it. You should. But the last thing that I want is that people are there mid-sun salutation and they freeze and they clam up because, oh my God, they just can't remember how to make a command out of the word to forward fold.
Okay.
All right. Great. Perfect. So I'd like to volunteer now.
Quick question.
Please.
Is there a sense that the command form like, does it ever come across as rude, or is it or is it like more direct? Is there a sense that using we is like a little bit gentler in a way? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it does sound a tiny bit gentler, but I've actually, my teacher, who, I mean, he's Ecuadorian, so he's a native speaker, and he says, actually, in class, I don't like people using the we form. We should always use the command form, because it, you know, I'm not participating in the action here. I'm just guiding, you know, and I'm guiding you. So you find all kinds of different opinions out there, but you know what? Our task in the Spanish language course is to make our communication as clear, as direct, as easy to understand as possible. And the fact is we're using the we form to facilitate that. All right, good. So the final thing that we need to deal with today before we have a little practice together are reflexive verbs, okay? So would somebody volunteer to read me that page that you see on the screen, reflexive se verbs?
I will.
Okay.
When the object of the verb is the same as the subject, the verb is reflexive. In English, we express this idea with the word self, or it is simply implied and not expressed. In Spanish, we use the se form of the verb.
Okay, so here's an interesting experiment. If I brought my wife up here now, Tanya, and I said to her, in English, Tanya, relax. I mean, she'd get that, right? You know, you'd get that if I said to you, relax. That makes sense as a sentence in English. Mm-hmm. If I said to her, Tanya, relaja, she's going to stand there looking really confused and waiting for me to complete my sentence. Why? Because in Spanish, there's always an object. So if I just said to her, Tanya, relaja, she would say to me, pero qué relajo? Like, what am I going to relax? She's waiting to hear that object. So in English, when I say to someone, relax, what I'm really saying to them is, relax yourself, right? And that is a reflexive verb, where the object of the verb is the same as the subject. You're the person who's doing the relaxing, and you're receiving the benefits of the relaxation, right? Okay? Again, if I said to you, get up, again, in English, that makes sense. But in Spanish, if I say to Tanya, levanta, she's going to be waiting, pero que levanto? Levanto mis brazos, levanto mi cuerpo, me levanto a mí misma. Like, what am I raising? Okay? So in Spanish, when the object of the verb is the same as the subject, what we're doing is we're using a reflexive verb here. Now, we do that in Spanish with the word nos. Okay? So nos is the object of a reflexive verb in the we form.
Doug?
Okay, so let's explore that a little bit more. A reflexive verb in the infinitive is going to appear with se in it. So, for example, levantarse, yeah? And what that means, literally, is to raise oneself. Okay? Another example, doblarse, to fold oneself. You don't really need to say oneself in English, do you? Because, I mean, it would sound really weird to say, fold yourself, half raise yourself, yeah? Kneel yourself down. So in English, we just kind of imply the meaning of a reflexive verb, okay? The question is, how do we put this in the we form? So, again, number one, we remove the se. The se becomes nos and goes before the verb. Yeah? And then we conjugate the verb normally. So for example, doblarse. Okay? So first of all, we remove the se and it becomes nos and goes before the verb. Nos doblarse. And then we conjugate the verb, nos doblar, I beg your pardon. And then we conjugate the verb normally. So we remove the R and we add mos. So, nos doblamos. And that means we fold ourselves. So if I'm in the sun salutation and I want to say to everybody, let's fold forwards, I'm gonna need to use the reflexive form of the verb, yeah? Nos doblamos, and that's it. It's reasonably straightforward, right? Okay. So the question is, which verbs do we use in a reflexive manner? So who's gonna help me read through these reflexive verbs?
I'll try.
Go ahead.
Acomodarse.
Good. So Helen, if I were to say to you now, how can we put that in the we form? Could you give me a quick hand and help me do that? What's the first thing that I'm going to do?
Nos acomodar.
Good, excellent. So what Helen did there was she removed the se became nos, and it went before the verb, meaning ourselves. So nos acomodar. Now we need to conjugate the verb. So how are we going to put it into the we form?
Acomodamos.
Excellent. So acomodarse becomes nos acomodamos. So let's get ourselves comfortable. Thank you. Who would like to deal with acostarse, to lie down?
Nos acostamos.
I'll try.
All right, so just one person. So somebody said nos acostamos. So again, we've taken that se, it's become nos and it's gone before the verb, and then acostar becomes acostamos. So nos acostamos. Let's lie ourselves down. Good. Who would like to deal with arrodillarse? Neil.
Me?
Yeah.
Lina? Nos arrodillamos.
Excellent. Nos arrodillamos. Good. Who can deal with balancearse, to balance or swing?
Nos balanceamos.
Excellent. Doblarse.
Nos doblamos.
Good. Empinarse.
Nos empinamos.
Excellent. Enraizarse.
Nos enraizamos.
Excellent. Equilibrarse.
Nos equilibramos.
Good. And that's how it goes. Nos estiramos, nos mecemos, nos ponemos de pie, nos relajamos, nos reposamos, nos sentamos. So, reflexive verbs are generally something that takes people a few days to get used to, yeah? So first of all, people have a little bit of difficulty, well, when should I use a reflexive verb, okay? And the question is, does your verb already have an object? So for example, if I was saying, relajamos los hombros, does that verb have an object?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
It does. What's the object?
Los
hombros. So is it necessary to make it reflexive? No, because it already has an object. But if somebody just says to me in a Spanish class, y relajamos, I'm waiting to hear, okay, well, what's the object? What am I relaxing? In that context, yes, the verb needs to be reflexive. And so we need to add a nos relajamos. What's the problem with the following sentence? Nos relajamos los hombros.
It's repetitive.
We
It's
relax
reflexive,
ourselves
but there's an
on
object.
shoulders.
Yeah, so there's two objects there, right? We've got nos, which is ourselves, and we've also got los hombros. So there's two objects. So we need to either delete the nos, yeah, and just say relajamos los hombros, or we need to delete los hombros and just say nos relajamos. Okay, does that make sense?
So is this to say that there's a reflexive tense for all verbs? I mean, you could.
So you could supposedly make a lot of verbs reflective, but it just wouldn't make logical sense, right? So if you look at the list of verbs here, for example, open, we might use the verb open reflexively in like, well, opening ourselves to new experiences or opening our hearts or something like that, right? So nos abrimos, why not? We might use abrazar reflexively, nos abrazamos, yeah? We hug ourselves. Nos activamos, we activate or tense ourselves. That sounds pretty weird to me.
Yeah.
Yeah? Nos alargamos, we can lengthen ourselves, yes. Nos alineamos, we align ourselves. Again, it just sounds a little bit weird to me, okay? So a lot of times a verb can be used either reflexively or in just a regular way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like more specifically, relax a certain thing or a certain body part.
That's correct. Good. So we're going to do a little bit of practice now. I'm going to guide some sun salutations and then a little seated sequence in Spanish, okay? So we're getting a little bit more used to hearing and following Spanish cues. So find a comfortable practice space, all right, where I can see you all. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Okay, so I'm going to translate some of these things into English as well as in Spanish so that you can begin to get an idea of what things sound like. Yeah, and so that not everybody's getting lost. Okay, so let's start in a standing position on our mats. Empezamos de pie en el inicio del mat, or de la colchoneta, okay? And let's separate the feet to hip width. Separamos los pies al ancho de las caderas. Good. And let's engage the arch. Activamos el arco del pie, right? Bring a gentle bend into the knees. Microflexionamos las rodillas. Good. Engage the abdomen. Activamos el abdomen. And let's roll the shoulder blades up, backwards, and down. Rotamos los hombros hacia arriba y hacia atrás. Y hacia abajo. Open the palms. Abrimos las palmas. With the in-breath, raise the arms. Con la inhalación, subimos las manos. Join the palms. Juntamos las palmas. Exhale, forward fold. Exhalamos, nos doblamos. Good. Relax the whole of your back body. Relajamos toda la espalda, todo el dorso del cuerpo. Inhale and half raise. Inhalamos, enderezamos la espalda. So straighten your backs. Exhalamos, colocamos las manos en la colchoneta. With the exhalation, place the hands on the mat. Damos un paso hacia atrás. Take a step backwards a la plancha, to the plank pose. Bajamos rodillas, pecho y mentón. Lower knees, chest and chin hasta la namaskara. Inhalamos, vamos hacia adelante. With the inhalation, move forwards. Colocamos los empeines en el tapete. So place the tops of the feet on the mat. Rotamos los hombros hacia atrás. So rotate the shoulders backwards. Inhalamos, subimos el pecho en la cobra. So inhale, raise the chest into a cobra. Exhalamos, bajamos. So exhale and lower. Con la inhalación vamos sobre 4 apoyos. With the inhalation, come up onto all fours. So that funny phrase was 4 apoyos, 4 supports. Good. Con los pies en corredor, with the feet in runner's position, subimos la pelvis hacia arriba y hacia atrás en perro que mira hacia abajo. So with the exhalation, raise the hips up and back into downward facing dog. Good. Estiramos un talón y el otro talón. Stretch one heel and then the other heel. Good. Flexionamos las rodillas, creamos curvatura en la espalda. So bend the knees, create curvature in the spine. Y miramos entre las manos. Look between the hands. Damos un paso hacia adelante. Take a step forwards. Enderezamos la columna. Half raise. Exhalamos. Nos relajamos en Uttanasana. Relax en Uttanasana. Inhalamos. Subimos vértebra por vértebra. Urdhva Hastasana. Raise vertebrae by vertebrae. Exhalamos, palmas al pecho en Anjali Mudra. Good. It's a hell of a mouthful doing it in 2 languages at once. So let's do it just in Spanish now. And we're going to move a little bit faster. So notice how I'm going to cut down my cueing to only the essentials. Okay, so I'm really going to pare my language down now. Empezamos en el inicio de la colchoneta, abrimos las palmas. Inhalamos, subimos los brazos en Urdhva Hastasana. Exhalamos, nos doblamos. Inhalamos, enderezamos la columna, miramos al suelo. Exhalamos, damos un paso atrás a la plancha. Con la inhalación activamos el abdomen. Exhalamos, bajamos al suelo. Inhalamos, enderezamos los brazos, abrimos pecho. Exhalamos, metemos los dedos, pelvis hacia arriba y atrás en perro que mira hacia abajo. 3 respiraciones aquí. Microdoblamos las rodillas, alargamos los costados del torso y rotamos los isquiones hacia arriba. Bien, miramos entre las manos con la inhalación, damos un paso hacia adelante. Exhalamos, nos relajamos en Uttanasana. Inhalamos, subimos vértebra por vértebra, palmas sobre la cabeza. Exhalamos, manos al pecho, Samastiti. Otra vez, inhalamos, Urdhva Hastasana. Exhalamos, nos doblamos, Uttanasana. Inhalamos, subimos a mitad, Ardha Uttanasana, perdón. Exhalamos, damos un paso atrás a la plancha y bajamos totalmente al suelo. Inhalamos, pero que mira hacia arriba, enderezamos los brazos. Exhalamos, pero que mira hacia abajo. Bien, otra vez. Traemos el pecho un poquito hacia adelante. Doblamos las rodillas. Rotamos los isquiones hacia el cielo y alargamos todo el torso. Bien, descendemos los talones. Con la inhalación, miramos entre las manos, damos un paso hacia adelante. Exhalamos, nos doblamos. Inhalamos, subimos vértebra por vértebra, Urdhva Hastasana. Exhalamos, Samastitihi y relajamos los brazos. Ok. Vamos a sentarnos. Let's come to a seat. Y cruzamos las piernas. Cross your legs. Si necesitas un cojín, if you need a cushion, lo puedes colocar debajo de las caderas. You can place it underneath your hips. Bien. Colocamos las palmas sobre las rodillas. Rotamos los hombros hacia arriba y atrás y alargamos los costados. Lengthen the sides of your body. Inhalamos, subimos los brazos. Inhale, raise the arms. Con la exhalación colocamos mano derecha en el suelo. Right hand comes to the floor. Inhalamos, subimos un poquito más el brazo izquierdo. Raise a little more your left hand. Y caminamos con los dedos hacia la derecha. Walk with the fingers towards the right. Estiramos todo el costado del torso. So stretch the whole of your side body here. Y respiramos hondo. Breathe deeply. Bien. Inhalamos al centro. Inhale to the center. Cambiamos de lado. Change sides. Mano izquierda al suelo. Inhala, estira todo tu costado y caminamos con los dedos hacia la izquierda. Estiramos todo el costado. So stretch the whole of your side body. Inhalamos centro. Entramos en una torsión. Let's come into a twist. Mano derecha a rodilla izquierda y mano izquierda detrás de las caderas. Good. Con la inhalación creamos espacio en toda la espalda. Exhalamos, entramos en la torsión un poquito. Muy bien. Con la inhalación volvemos al centro. Y con la exhalación cambiamos de lado. Mano izquierda, rodilla derecha. Mano derecha detrás del cuerpo. Con la inhalación creamos espacio. Enderezamos la columna. Y exhalamos, entramos un poquito más en la torsión. Muy bien, volvemos al centro, elevamos los brazos, exhalamos palmas al pecho. Muy bien. Okay, so well done everybody. Does anybody have any questions about how I was using my verbs there, about some of the nouns that I was using?
Rotate. Word for rotate.
Yeah, so to rotate is rotar. R-O-T-A-R, rotar.
I heard create space. That was a good one.
Crear espacio. Yeah, crear espacio. So there's lots of phrases that you'll hear over the next few days that are just kind of nice sort of ways of putting things in Spanish, like juntar omóplatos, to join your shoulder blades, for example. Alargar los costados, to lengthen the side body.
Andrew, so you said volvemos. Do we ever use regresamos?
Also.
Could they be used interchangeably for whatever? Okay.
Yeah, volver and regresar mean pretty much the same thing, to be honest. Yeah. To return.
Okay.
It seems like kind of like the art and challenge of this for me is like deciding or figuring out if I'm using the reflexive verb or just the regular form of it, kind of like on the fly. That seems like that'll be the hard part.
It will be challenging and you'll make plenty of mistakes, but you know what? That's okay. Because part of learning a language is getting used to making mistakes and then refining the mistakes. You'll get to the stage when you begin to catch yourself saying, oh, I've used two objects there, or oh, I haven't used any objects at all there. And so you'll get used to it. But part of it will come in the writing. So we're going to be starting to write our own sequences over the next couple of days, and you'll get to experiment a little bit with verbs there.
Can I just ask as well, what was the word that's used in Spain for balls of the feet? Because it's different, I remember.
So I think somebody said to me yesterday that they talked about las almohadillas de los pies. So like an almohadilla is like a little cushion.
Okay.
Yeah. Or las bolas de los pies.
And also the word for mat is different in Spain.
It is. We'll come to that too. Yeah, I can think of about 5 different words I've heard for the word mat in Spanish.
Yeah.
Good. So one thing that I was trying to get across in our mini practice today is how much you need to pare your language down. Yeah? How much you need to simplify. And so a part of that is going to be your homework today, okay? What I would like you to do for tomorrow is to create a mini sequence of between 8 and 12 postures, right? Now, for each of those 8 to 12 postures, I want you to create 2 or 3 cues and make them as basic as possible in English, right? So we're going to do this in our own language first of all, and then we'll try it in Spanish, right? So, how many postures are you going to choose?
Sorry, Andrew, could you repeat that, the instructions for the homework again? Just my brain and my hands weren't working at the same speed.
Yeah. So the first thing is to choose a sequence of between 8 and 12 postures. Yeah. And then for each of those postures, make 2 to 3 cues in English, but make them as simple as you possibly can. Right? So for example, I might choose the sun salutation, right? So I might say to people, come to standing. Yeah? Roll the shoulders up and back. Okay, those are my 2 cues. Inhale, raise the hands. Great, just 1 cue is needed for that. Exhale, forward fold, and relax the whole of the spine. Inhale, half raise and straighten the back. Exhale, plant the hands and step back to plank. So I'm really making these simple. I mean, I could, if I wanted, spend all day talking about alignment in the sun salutations, but that's not what I want. I want to really simplify and pare down my language so that it's the most basic that I can possibly get away with. Does that make sense?
So it's 2 or 3 cues for each posture?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you need that many. I mean, as I say, sometimes you may only need one cue. But then try guiding someone through warrior 2, reverse warrior, side angle, and triangle with just 1 cue per pose. You'll find it almost impossible. So yeah, some postures will need a couple more.
Andrew, do you want them to be a sequence, or do you want for 8 to 12 postures?
Well, it's kind of up to you, really, because at the end of the day, you're going to be putting these into Spanish eventually, yeah? So the question is, do you want a sequence that leads one posture on from the next that you can teach? Or do you just want a group of kind of random postures? And that's totally up to you. I don't have a preference there. The other part of your homework is to choose 13 brand new verbs that you've not seen before today. And I'd like you to learn them for tomorrow. So with these verbs, it will take you a few days to get really used to them. So if you feel a little bit today, oh, I feel kind of a little bit overwhelmed by all of this information, that's okay. That's kind of normal for this, this stage in the course of things. We're learning a lot of new language all at once. but just be patient with yourself. If you don't understand it today, figure out what it is that you're not certain about and ask me tomorrow. You know, there's no such thing as a dumb question with language learning. All questions are equally good. So just ask away, you know, really don't be afraid about asking. I'm always super happy to try and answer the best that I can. Great. Okay, so you've got your 2 bits of homework. If anybody has any other questions, please, you can also write me on the WhatsApp group. There's still a couple of people who need to get me back their letters of residence signed. So if you still haven't sent me that, if you could send me that today, that would be greatly appreciated. All right. Well, thank you ever so much, everyone. It's been lovely working with you all today. I hope you've enjoyed the class as well. And I will see you all tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Bye.